The pregnancy test stares back at me with two pink lines that might as well be a death sentence. My hands shake as I grip the bathroom counter, knuckles white, breath coming in short, uneven gasps that echo off the tile walls. Bile rises in my throat, not from morning sickness, but from pure, unadulterated terror. I'm 24 years old. I just got promoted 6 months ago. I have a one-bedroom apartment with a leaky faucet and a plant that's barely hanging on. I'm not ready for this. For months ago, I let Sebastian freaking Vance touch me. For months ago, during what I thought was just another heated argument about the Emerson account, I ended up pressed against the conference room wall with his mouth on my throat and his hands everywhere they shouldn't have been. And now I'm carrying his baby. I can't breathe. The tiny bathroom feels like it's closing in on me, a fluorescent light buzzing overhead like an angry wasp trapped in a jar. I stare at the test again, hoping somehow the lines will fade or disappear or prove themselves to be some cruel joke played by faulty manufacturing. But they remain stubbornly pink, stubbornly real, stubbornly there. Fuck, I whisper to my reflection. Fuck, fuck, fuck. My mind races back to that night, even though I've spent the last 4 months trying to forget it. It was after the Emerson Industries presentation, the one where Sebastian had swooped in at the last minute with his brilliant insights that somehow made my 3 weeks of research look like amateur hour. I'd stayed late, furious and defeated, reorganizing my files for the 100th time, when he'd found me in a conference room. "Still here, Matthews?" he'd asked, that insufferable smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. "You know the deal's already closed, right? No amount of color coding is going to change that." I'd snapped something about his casual arrogance, the way he leaned against the door frame like he owned the entire building, the subtle scent of his alpha pheromones that made my omega instincts riot even as my conscious mind wanted to strangle him. It all became too much. The frustration, the attraction I refused to name, the way he looked at me like I was a puzzle he couldn't solve and a problem he couldn't fix all at once. I'd thrown my folder at him. Papers scattered everywhere. And somehow we'd ended up pressed against the wall, his mouth on mine, his hands in my hair, my legs wrapped around his waist. We never talked about it afterward. The next Monday, he acted like nothing had happened. Same smirk, same casual put-downs, same maddening competence that made me want to both scream and kiss him. And I was grateful for his indifference. Or at least I thought I was. Now, staring at this test, I realized how naive I'd been to think one night of weakness wouldn't have consequences. I can't tell him. The thought crystallizes in my mind with terrifying clarity. Sebastian Vance, 29 years old, Golden Boy Alpha, Senior Account Director, heir apparent to the VP position everyone says he'll have by 30. The man who spent the last 3 years making my life a living hell at Sterling Company. Every presentation I give, he finds a way to one-up me. Every client I land, he swoops in with a better pitch, a sharper angle, a connection I didn't know he had. The worst part? Everyone loves him for it. They call him driven and ambitious and a natural leader. Meanwhile, I'm just the difficult omega who takes things too personally. If he knew about this pregnancy, he'd probably think I did it on purpose to trap him. Just like his father trapped his mother. I've heard the story, whispered in break rooms and happy hour conversations, passed around like office folklore. How Sebastian's father was a rising star at his firm until he got an Omega colleague pregnant. How he had to marry her, give up his dreams of partnership, spend the rest of his career in middle management while she played the perfect housewife. How bitter they both became, taking their resentment out on their only son. Sebastian has always been vocal about never wanting to repeat his parents' mistakes. "Love is just biology playing tricks on you," he'd said once during a team dinner, his gray eyes hard as glass. Smart people don't fall for it. I've been sitting across from him, pretending to be absorbed in my salmon, feeling the weight of his gaze like a physical thing. My phone buzzes with a text from my best friend, Marcus. "Coffee? You've been MIA for weeks. I'm starting to think you've joined a cult or something." I stare at the message, knowing I can't keep avoiding everyone forever. Marcus has known me since college. He's a beta, sharp as a tack, and he'll sense something's wrong the moment he sees me. But I also can't sit alone in my apartment for another day, spiraling into panic about a future I never planned for. Rain check. Feeling under the weather, I type back. His response comes immediately. You've been under the weather for 3 weeks, Leo. I'm bringing soup and judgment. See you at 7. I groan and let my head fall forward onto the cool bathroom counter. My scent blockers are working overtime to hide the pregnancy hormones, but they won't last much longer. The medication is expensive, insurance covers some of it, but not enough, and I can only get so many refills before my doctor starts asking questions I'm not ready to answer. In a few weeks, every alpha in a 5-mile radius will know exactly what's happening to me. The thought makes my stomach lurch again. I splash cold water on my face and practice my normal expression in the mirror. The reflection looking back at me seems pale and hollow-eyed, dark circles bruising the skin beneath my eyes, cheekbones sharper than they were a month ago. But maybe I can pass it off as stress. Late nights. The Emerson account. Everything's fine, I whisper to my reflection, even though my world is falling apart. Everything's perfectly fine. The lie tastes bitter, but it's the only thing keeping me sane right now. I spend the weekend researching options I'm not sure I'm ready to consider. Adoption agencies. Support groups for single Omega parents. Termination clinics. I stare at that search result for a long time before closing the tab. Each website feels like stepping into a different version of my future, and none of them feel real. By Sunday night, I made exactly 0 decisions and consumed an alarming amount of ginger tea. My apartment smells like desperation and lemon, and I've rearranged my bookshelf twice just to have something to do with my hands. Marcus shows up at 7 with wonton soup and a look on his face that says he already knows something's wrong. You look like shit, he says, pushing past me into the apartment. And I mean that with love. Thanks, I mutter, closing the door behind him. You really know how to make a guy feel special. He sets the takeout bags on my kitchen counter and turns to study me with those sharp brown eyes that miss nothing. Marcus is a beta, but his observational skills would put most alphas to shame. He's been my best friend for 7 years, through bad breakups and worse decisions, and he can read me like a book. Okay, Spill, he says, crossing his arms. What's going on? You've been ghosting everyone for weeks. You look like you haven't slept since the last election. And you're drinking ginger tea, which you only drink when you're nauseous. I've had a stomach bug. For 3 weeks. It's a stubborn stomach bug. Marcus raises an eyebrow. Leo, I've known you too long for this. Just tell me. I open my mouth to lie again, but nothing comes out. The words get stuck in my throat, tangled up with 4 months of fear and denial and secrets I'm not ready to share. And then, before I can stop it, I'm crying. Marcus's arms are around me before the first tear falls, pulling me into a hug that's warm and familiar and exactly what I need. I cry into his shoulder like I haven't cried since I was 17, and my first alpha boyfriend broke my heart in the back of his car. Hey, Marcus murmurs, rubbing my back in slow circles. Hey, it's okay. Whatever it is, we'll figure it out. I'm pregnant, I choke out. Marcus goes very still. Okay, he says slowly, pulling back to look at my face. Okay. Wow. Okay. I know. Who's the father? I shake my head, not trusting my voice. Leo. Who? Sebastian, I whisper. Marcus's eyes go wide. Sebastian Vance. Your work rival Sebastian? The one you complain about every single time we get drinks? That's Sebastian. There's only one Sebastian. Holy shit. Marcus sinks onto my couch, pulling me down beside him. Holy shit, Leo. How did this even happen? It was after the Emerson presentation. We got into a fight, and one thing led to another, and you just never mentioned this. It was one night. It didn't mean anything. He didn't even look at me differently afterward. I thought we could just pretend it never happened. Marcus rubs his face with both hands. Okay, so what's the plan? Have you told him? No. And I'm not going to. Leo. No. Marcus, you know what he's like. He thinks omegas are manipulative. He thinks bonding and claiming are biological traps. If I tell him, he'll think I did this on purpose to lock him down. You don't know that. Yes, I do. I've heard him talk about it 100 times. Love is biology playing tricks. Smart people don't fall for it. He's not going to suddenly become a different person just because I'm pregnant. Marcus is quiet for a long moment. What do you want to do? I don't know. My voice cracks. I don't know anything anymore. Okay. He takes my hand, squeezes it. Then we figure it out together. One thing at a time. You're not alone in this, Leo. I don't care what you decide, I'm here. I lean my head on his shoulder and try to believe him. Monday morning comes too soon. At work, I keep my head down and avoid the break room, where Sebastian usually holds court with the other alphas. I take the stairs instead of the elevator. I eat lunch at my desk, saltine crackers and apple slices, the only things that don't make me want to die. I leave through the parking garage instead of the main lobby. It's exhausting, being constantly vigilant, but it's better than risking an encounter I'm not prepared for. My luck runs out during the monthly team meeting. I'm only half listening, distracted by the way the conference room smells like anxiety and stale coffee, when our boss, Director Chin, announces the new project assignments. Leo and Sebastian will be co-leading the Hawthorne account, she says, and my heart stops. The words echo in my ears like a bad joke. 3 months. 3 months of working closely with the father of my unborn child. 3 months of pretending everything is normal, while my body betrays me more each day. I feel the blood drain from my face and pray no one notices. Sebastian catches my eye across the conference table and flashes that infuriating smirk that makes my Omega instincts go haywire even now. Looking forward to working together, Matthews, he says, his voice carrying that casual confidence I've learned to associate with trouble. His gaze lingers on my face a bit too long, like he's cataloging every micro-expression, every flicker of emotion I'm trying to hide. I force a tight smile, even though I want to run. Likewise, Vance. The words come out steadier than I feel, which I count as a small victory. Around us, the meeting continues. People discuss timelines and deliverables, and I nod along like I'm paying attention. But I can barely focus on anything beyond the sudden reality that my carefully constructed walls are about to come crashing down. After the meeting, I bolt for the bathroom and lock myself in a stall. I press my palms against my still flat stomach, 15 weeks now, barely showing, but I can feel the changes in my body every single day, and breathe deeply through my nose. This is going to be the longest 3 months of my life. I'm sorry, little one. I whisper to the baby that no one else knows about. Mama doesn't have any good answers yet, but as I sit there in the fluorescent-lit silence, one thing becomes crystal clear. I can't keep running forever. Eventually, I'm going to have to face Sebastian Vance and everything that comes with him. I just hope I'm strong enough when that moment comes. You're distracted. Sebastian is leaning against my desk with that casual confidence that makes my skin crawl and my heart race at the same time. It's been exactly 1 week since the Hawthorne announcement, and he's already making my life complicated in ways I didn't think possible. The Hawthorne presentation was sloppy. That's not like you. His sharp gray eyes study my face like he's trying to solve a puzzle, and I resist the urge to fidget under his scrutiny. The morning sickness hit hard today. I barely made it through the client call without embarrassing myself. Apparently, my attempts to cover were less successful than I'd hoped. Define sloppy, I say, not looking up from my computer screen, where I'm frantically trying to salvage the notes I'd butchered during the meeting. My hands are still shaking slightly from the wave of nausea that had crashed over me when Hawthorne mentioned wanting to dive deep into the demographics breakdown. You mixed up the Q3 and Q4 projections twice. Sebastian's voice is matter of fact, but there's something underneath it, concern, maybe. That's new. And you kept losing your train of thought mid-sentence. Hawthorne noticed. Heat flushes through my cheeks. I pride myself on being professional, prepared, unshakable. The fact that my pregnancy symptoms are affecting my work performance makes me want to crawl under my desk and disappear. I had a late night, I mutter. I'll have the corrections ready within the hour. I've been working late every night this week, partly to avoid rush hour crowds where my scent might give me away, and partly because being alone with my thoughts is better than facing Sebastian's probing questions. The office after hours is quiet, peaceful. No curious glances, no small talk about weekend plans I can't make, no risk of my scent blockers failing at an inconvenient moment. I'm fine. I snap when he doesn't move away like he usually would after one of our verbal sparring matches. Maybe you should focus on your own work instead of micromanaging mine. Instead of taking the hint, he sits on the edge of my desk, close enough that his alpha scent wraps around me like a warm blanket. My omega instincts react immediately. My heart rate picks up, my breathing deepens, and there's a flutter low in my stomach that has nothing to do with morning sickness. It's infuriating how my body responds to him even when my mind knows better. "When's the last time you ate something?" he asks, and the genuine concern in his voice throws me off balance completely. "You look pale." I glance up at him in surprise. This is definitely new territory for us. For 3 years, our relationship has been built on competition and carefully maintained professional distance. We challenge each other's ideas. We fight for the same promotions. We trade barbs disguised as constructive feedback. We don't ask about eating habits or comment on each other's appearance beyond the occasional sarcastic observation. "Since when do you care about my eating habits?" The words come out sharper than I intended, but I can't help the defensive response. This is dangerous territory, especially when my pregnancy hormones are making me crave his attention in ways I can't afford to explore. He shrugs, but his eyes don't leave my face. "Since you started looking like you might pass out during client meetings." Bad for the company image. There it is, the casual dismissal that reminds me why this man is dangerous. He can shift from seeming concerned to coldly professional in the span of a sentence, leaving me wondering what's real and what's just strategy. I turn back to my computer, determined to ignore him until he gets bored and leaves. But instead of leaving, he reaches across my desk to grab a pen from my cup holder. His arm brushes against mine, and the contact sends electricity through my entire body. Every nerve ending lights up like fireworks, and suddenly I'm right back in that conference room, pressed against the wall with his hands in my hair and his mouth on my throat. I jerk away, so fast I knock over my coffee mug, sending lukewarm caffeine cascading across my desk and onto the floor. "Shit," I mutter, jumping up to grab napkins from the break room. But Sebastian's already there, soaking up the spill with tissues from my desk drawer. "Easy there, Matthews," he says with a chuckle that's frustratingly attractive. "It's just coffee." But when he looks up at me from where he's crouched beside my desk, something shifts in his expression. His nostrils flare slightly, so subtly I almost miss it, and his eyes go wide for just a fraction of a second before he schools his features back to neutral. I freeze, wondering if my scent blockers are failing. If he can smell the hormonal changes I've been so desperately trying to hide. We stare at each other for a long moment, the air between us thick with tension I can't quite name. His gaze drops to my mouth, then lower, and I swear I see recognition flicker across his features. My heart pounds so hard I'm sure he can hear it. "Leo?" Marcus's voice cuts through the moment like a knife, and I practically leap away from Sebastian like he's on fire. "Ready for lunch?" He's standing in my cubicle entrance, eyeing the scene with raised eyebrows that suggest he's picking up on way more than I'm comfortable with. His nostrils twitch slightly, a tell I recognize from college, when he was trying to figure out which of our dorm mates was hooking up with whom. Marcus has always had an unusually keen sense of smell for a beta. Sebastian straightens up slowly, tossing the coffee-stained tissues into my trash can with deliberate casualness. His gaze never leaves my face, and there's something calculating in his expression that makes my stomach flip. "Actually, I was just leaving," he says, backing toward the elevator. "See you tomorrow, Matthews. Try to get some rest." The way he says it sounds more like a warning than a suggestion, and I'm left wondering exactly what he thinks he knows. The elevator doors close behind him with a soft ding, but I can still feel the lingering heat of his presence. Okay, what the hell was that about? Marcus demands the moment he's gone. The sexual tension in here is so thick I could cut it with a knife. There's no sexual tension. I sink back into my desk chair. That was just normal workplace interaction. Marcus perches on the edge of my desk, the same spot Sebastian had occupied moments before, and crosses his arms. I've seen you two interact before. That was not normal. That was we've seen each other naked energy. My face flames red, and Marcus's eyes widen triumphantly. Oh my God, you did. You and Sebastian Vance. Keep your voice down, I hiss, glancing around to make sure no one else is listening. It was nothing. One time. Ancient history. Ancient history doesn't explain why you smell like. Marcus stops mid-sentence, his expression shifting from teasing to concerned. He leans closer, inhaling subtly. Leo, when did you go into heat last? My blood turns to ice. If Marcus can smell it, if he's picking up on the hormonal changes even through my scent blockers, then it's only a matter of time before every alpha in the building figures it out. I'm fine, I say weakly. That's not what I ask. His voice is gentle, but firm. You smell different. Sweet, but not heat sweet. More like. He trails off, and I watch in horror as understanding dawns across his face. Oh, honey. Are you? I can't bring myself to say the words out loud, but apparently my expression is answer enough. Marcus's hand flies to his mouth, and his eyes fill with tears that make my own throat tight with emotion I've been suppressing for weeks. How far along? He whispers. 15 weeks. I admit, and saying it out loud makes it feel more real than any pregnancy test could. Marcus, I don't know what to do. He's off the desk and pulling me into a hug before I can blink, and suddenly I'm crying in his arms in the middle of my cubicle. All the fear and confusion and overwhelming uncertainty I've been carrying alone finally spilling over. We'll figure it out, he whispers into my hair. Whatever you decide, we'll figure it out together. But as he holds me, I can't shake the image of Sebastian's face when he looked up at me from beside my desk, or the way his expression had shifted from teasing to something much more complicated. Tomorrow is going to bring a whole new set of challenges, and I'm running out of time to prepare for them. You've been lying to me. Sebastian's voice is deadly quiet as he corners me in the supply closet after everyone else has gone home. The fluorescent light flickers overhead, casting strange shadows across his face that make him look almost dangerous. His gray eyes are dark with an emotion I can't read, and my heart hammers against my ribs like a trapped bird. For weeks, I've been watching you make excuses. Avoid eye contact. Flinch every time I get close. He steps closer, and I retreat until my back hits the shelves. What the hell is going on, Leo? I should have known this moment was coming. For the past 5 days since my breakdown with Marcus, I've been even more careful around Sebastian. Too careful, apparently. I've caught him watching me during meetings, hovering near my desk just outside my peripheral vision, always leaving the office at the same time I do. He's been studying me like I'm a problem that needs solving. And Sebastian Vance has never met a problem he couldn't crack. I press my back against the wall of shelves, trying to put distance between us. But there's nowhere to go. The supply closet is barely 6 feet wide, filled with boxes of printer paper and toner cartridges that smell like industrial plastic and dust. I don't know what you're talking about. I lie even though we both know it's pathetic. My scent blockers failed completely 2 hours ago. I felt the moment they stopped working, like a switch flipping off. The medication is getting less effective as the pregnancy progresses, and I'm running out of excuses for why I need stronger doses. By now, every alpha scent Sebastian has is probably screaming that something's different about me. Don't. His hand slams against the shelf beside my head, making me jump. A box of sticky notes tumbles to the floor, and the sound echoes too loud in the small space. Don't lie to my face when I can smell the truth on you. His voice drops to a growl that vibrates through his chest, and my omega instincts respond immediately. Every cell in my body wants to bare my throat, to submit, to let him take care of whatever's wrong. But I force myself to meet his gaze, channeling every ounce of stubborn determination I have left. You're pregnant. The words hit the air between us like a physical blow. And based on the timing and the way you've been acting around me, I'm guessing it's mine. The confirmation hits me like a freight train. Even though I'd been expecting it, hearing him say it out loud in that matter-of-fact tone, the same one he uses for quarterly reports and client presentations, makes it real in a way it hadn't been before. I can't hide my reaction fast enough. My face crumples, my breath hitches, and I see his eyes widen as he reads the confirmation written across every one of my features. Then his expression hardens into something cold and furious. And I realize that knowing the truth and accepting it are two very different things. Were you ever going to tell me? He demands, and there's real pain underneath the anger now. Or were you just going to disappear one day and leave me wondering? Transfer to another department? Another city? Let me figure it out when you stop showing up to work. It's not your problem. Anger finally overrides my fear, and the words come out harsh and defensive. Exactly the wrong tone, but I can't help it. I've been dreading this conversation for weeks, playing it out in my head in dozens of different ways, and somehow it's going exactly as badly as I'd imagined. I can handle this on my own. I don't need your pity or your guilty conscience making decisions for me. The words taste like ash in my mouth, but they're the only protection I have left against the way he's looking at me, like I betrayed him in the worst possible way. Not your problem. His laugh is bitter and sharp, nothing like the warm chuckle I'd heard yesterday when he was teasing Marcus about his terrible coffee order. That's my child you're carrying, Leo. That makes it very much my problem. He steps closer. Close enough that I can feel the heat radiating from his body. Close enough that his scent wraps around me like a living thing. This close, I can see the flecks of gold in his gray eyes, can count the individual lines of tension around his mouth. This close, I remember exactly why one heated argument had turned into hands and mouths in desperation against a conference room wall. Did you think I wouldn't care? His voice is rough with emotion I didn't know he was capable of. That I just walk away and pretend nothing happened? What kind of man do you think I am? Yes. The honesty of it seems to hit him harder than any insult I could have thrown. That's exactly what I thought you'd do. Because that's who you are, Sebastian. You take what you want and move on without looking back. I think about every conversation I've overheard, every casual comment about keeping things simple, avoiding complications. I think about the stories about his parents, the way his jaw tightens whenever anyone mentions marriage or commitment or family. I think about how easily he dismissed that night between us, how quickly he'd gone back to treating me like a rival instead of someone he'd been inside of. You made it clear that night didn't mean anything to you. I continue, my voice gaining strength as the words pour out of me. You went right back to undermining my work, stealing my clients, making my life difficult. You never even acknowledged it happened. So forgive me if I didn't think you'd suddenly develop a conscience about the consequences. For a moment, hurt flashes across his features so clearly that I almost take the words back. His face goes through a series of micro-expressions, surprise, pain, something that might be regret, before settling into careful blankness. You think that night didn't mean anything to me? He asks quietly, and there's something fragile in his voice I've never heard before. I don't know how to answer that. I don't know what to do with the possibility that I might have been wrong, that maybe his indifference was as much of a performance as my own. The silence stretches between us, heavy with 4 months of unspoken truths. Then his face shudders closed, and when he speaks again, his voice is ice. You don't know me at all. He steps back like I've burned him. And clearly, I don't know you either. He turns toward the door, his movements sharp and angry, and I feel something crack inside my chest. This is what I wanted, isn't it? For him to walk away? To leave me alone to figure this out on my own terms? So why does watching him go feel like losing something I didn't know I wanted to keep? He pauses with his hand on the doorknob, and for a moment I think he might turn around. Might say something that will make this conversation end differently. But when he speaks, his words are clipped and professional. This conversation isn't over, Matthews. Not even close. The door clicks shut behind him with a finality that echoes in the small space. I slide down the wall until I'm sitting on the floor amongst scattered office supplies, my hands pressed against my still flat stomach. The baby is barely the size of an apple now, according to the pregnancy app Marcus insisted I download. but somehow it feels like it's changing everything about my life at light speed. Well, kid, I whispered to my belly. That went about as well as expected. I sit there in the dim light of the supply closet for a long time, listening to the buildings settle around me, and try to figure out what comes next. Because Sebastian was right about one thing, this conversation is far from over. And tomorrow, I'll have to face whatever comes next. I just hope I'm ready for it. The next morning, I find a note taped to my desk. We need to talk. Properly. My place, 7 p.m. Don't say no. The handwriting is sharp, angular, unmistakably his. I stare at it for a full minute, my coffee growing cold in my hand, my stomach churning with a combination of morning sickness and dread. Everything okay? Marcus appears at my elbow, his brow furrowed. No, I admit, but I don't really have a choice. I spend the whole day distracted, unable to focus on the Hawthorne files spread across my desk, jumping every time my phone buzzes with a notification that isn't from him. By the time 5 p.m. rolls around, I've accomplished approximately nothing and consumed an entire pack of ginger chews. Want me to come with you? Marcus offers as I gather my things. No. I need to do this alone. You sure? No. But I'm going anyway. Sebastian's apartment is in a building that costs more than I make in a year. The doorman lets me in with a knowing look that makes me want to crawl out of my skin, and the elevator ride up to the 15th floor feels like the longest of my life. He opens the door before I can knock. He's different here, in his own space. Out of his work clothes, wearing a soft gray sweater that makes his shoulders look impossibly broad and jeans that fit him like they were made for him. His feet are bare, and there's something disarming about that small vulnerability that makes my chest tight. Come in, he says, stepping aside. I hesitate for just a moment, then cross the threshold. His apartment is not what I expected. Warm, for one thing. Soft lighting, actual art on the walls, bookshelves filled with worn paperbacks. A guitar in the corner that I can't imagine him playing. It smells like him, cedar and something darker, something that makes my omega instincts sit up and pay attention. You have a nice place, I say because I don't know what else to say. Thanks. He gestures to the couch. Sit. I'll get you some water. Or tea. Marcus mentioned you've been drinking ginger tea. Of course Marcus mentioned that. I want to kill him. Water's fine. I sit on the edge of the couch, my hands clasped in my lap, my whole body thrumming with tension. He returns with 2 glasses of water and sits in the armchair across from me. Not next to me, I notice. He's putting distance between us deliberately. For a long moment, neither of us speaks. Then Sebastian sets down his glass and leans forward, his elbows on his knees, his gray eyes meeting mine with an intensity that makes it hard to breathe. I'm not going to apologize for how I reacted yesterday, he says. I was angry, and I said things I meant, and I'm not going to pretend otherwise. But I shouldn't have walked out like that. We should have finished the conversation. Which part of it? I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. The part where you accused me of lying to you? Or the part where you acted like I'd personally betrayed you by getting pregnant? Both. He doesn't flinch. I was angry because you kept something huge from me. Something that affects both of us. And I was angry because... He pauses, his jaw working. Because you didn't even give me a chance to prove you wrong. Prove me wrong about what? About not caring. The words hang in the air between us, and I don't know what to do with them. I don't understand you, I admit. I've spent 3 years trying to figure you out, and I still don't understand you. One minute you're undermining my work and making my life difficult. The next, you're asking when I last ate and looking at me like... I trail off, not sure how to finish that sentence. Like what? Like you actually see me. Something shifts in his expression, something soft and raw and vulnerable that I've never seen before. I've always seen you, Leo. His voice is quiet, almost rough. That's the problem. What's that supposed to mean? He stands up suddenly, pacing to the window and back, his hands shoved in his pockets. You want to know why I've been competing with you for 3 years? Why I always have to one-up you? always have to be better. He laughs, but there's no humor in it. Because it was the only way I could get your attention. I stare at him. The first time I saw you, the day you started at Sterling, you walked into the conference room like you owned the place. You were 21 years old, fresh out of college, and you looked every senior executive in the eye and didn't flinch. Not once. He stops pacing, turns to face me. I'd never seen anything like it. I never met anyone like you. My first day, you told me my presentation was adequate at best, because I was an idiot who didn't know how else to talk to you. He runs a hand through his dark hair, frustrated. Every time I try to be nice, it came out wrong. Every time I try to get closer, you pulled away. So I did the only thing I knew how to do. I competed with you. I pushed you. I made you fight for everything, because at least then you were looking at me. My heart is pounding so hard I can feel it in my throat. That night, I say slowly, after the Emerson presentation, was that? I didn't plan it. His voice drops. God, Leo, I didn't plan it. I was an asshole, and you threw that folder at me, and you were so furious and so beautiful that I couldn't think straight. And then you kissed me. You kissed me. Does it matter who kissed who first? He takes a step toward me, then stops himself. Afterward, I told myself it was a mistake. That you didn't want it to mean anything. That if I pushed, if I tried to make it more, you think I was just another alpha trying to claim you. So I pretended it didn't happen. I thought I was protecting you. Protecting us. You were protecting yourself, I say quietly. He goes still. You were scared. I continue, the words coming easier now. Scared that if you admitted it meant something, you'd end up like your parents. Trapped. Resentful. So you pushed me away before I could push you away first. His expression cracks, just slightly. Just enough for me to see the truth underneath. I'm still scared, he admits. I've been scared every single day since that night. But I'm more scared of losing you than I am of ending up like my father. I don't know who moves first. Maybe both of us. One moment we're across the room from each other, and the next he's pulling me into his arms, and I'm burying my face in his chest, breathing in his scent like I've been drowning and he's air. I'm sorry, he murmurs into my hair. I'm sorry I was such a coward. I'm sorry I made you feel like you had to do this alone. You're still an insufferable alpha who thinks he knows what's best for everyone. I mumble against his sweater. He laughs, a real laugh, warm and surprised. Yeah, I know. I pull back just enough to look at his face. His gray eyes are soft, vulnerable in a way I've never seen before, and something in my chest loosens. I'm still figuring out what I want, I say. What I'm going to do. Primeira vez em decisões yet. I know. But I'm glad you know. About the baby, I'm glad I don't have to hide it anymore. His hand comes up to cup my face, his thumb brushing across my cheekbone with a gentleness that makes my breath catch. You don't have to hide anything from me, Leo. Not anymore. And standing there in his living room, with his arms around me, and his scent in my lungs, and the weight of our secret finally lifted, I let myself believe him. The next few weeks are complicated. We don't suddenly become a couple. We don't move in together or start planning a future or any of the things I catch myself daydreaming about when I should be working. Instead, we exist in this strange limbo, not rivals anymore, not quite partners, something in between that doesn't have a name. We work on the Hawthorne account together, and it's different now. He still pushes me, still challenges my ideas, but there's no edge to it anymore. No competition. Just collaboration. Partnership. The way it should have been from the beginning. He starts bringing me breakfast. Every morning, without fail, there's something on my desk when I arrive. A bagel, a smoothie, a container of fresh fruit. Nothing that might trigger my morning sickness, I realize after the first week. He's been paying attention to what I can and can't eat. You don't have to do this. I tell him one morning, staring at the oatmeal with fresh berries that's appeared on my desk. I know. He's already walking away, coffee in hand, that infuriating smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. But I'm going to anyway. Marcus thinks it's romantic. I think it's confusing. Just talk to him, Marcus says for the 100th time, perched on the edge of my bed while I stress-fold my laundry. You're literally carrying his child. You can't avoid the "what are we" conversation forever. Watch me, Leo. I don't know what to say, okay? I throw a pair of socks at him. He catches them easily. Things are good right now. Complicated, but good. What if I bring it up and it ruins everything? What if you don't bring it up and you spend the next 6 months in this weird limbo, getting more and more attached until it's too late? That's very logical and annoying, and I hate you. Love you too. The turning point comes at 19 weeks. I'm lying on the exam table at my OB appointment, the cold gel spreading across my stomach when the ultrasound wand picks up the heartbeat, strong and fast and impossibly real. Dr. Patel points to the screen, showing me the tiny fingers and toes, the curve of a spine, the flutter of a heart that's half mine and half his. Would you like to know the sex? She asks. I hesitate. I hadn't thought about this part. Hadn't let myself think about any of it really beyond getting through each day. Yes, I say finally. I want to know. She smiles. It's a boy. A boy. I'm having a son. I lie there afterward, staring at the printed ultrasound photos, trying to wrap my mind around the reality of it. A tiny person is growing inside me. A person with Sebastian's eyes or my stubborn chin, with a future I haven't even begun to imagine. My phone buzzes. A text from Sebastian. How did it go? I stare at the message for a long time. Then I type back, it's a boy. His response comes immediately. I'm coming over. I should tell him not to. I should maintain the careful distance we've been keeping, the boundaries that protect my heart from wanting things I can't have. Instead, I type, okay. He shows up at my apartment 20 minutes later with takeout from my favorite Thai place and a look on his face I can't quite read. A boy, he says as I let him in. We're having a son. We're not having anything, I say automatically, but the words come out softer than I intended. I'm having a son. You're just adjacent. He sets the takeout bags on my kitchen counter and turns to face me. Adjacent? That's what I said. Leo. He takes a step toward me. I'm the father of your child. I've been bringing you breakfast every morning for 3 weeks. I know your OB's name and your due date and the fact that you can't eat anything with garlic after 6 p.m. because it gives you nightmares. I'm not adjacent. Then what are you? The question hangs in the air between us, and I hold my breath, waiting. He runs a hand through his hair, a gesture I've come to recognize as nervous, though he'd never admit it. I don't know, he admits. I'm still figuring it out, but I know I'm not going anywhere. It's not the answer I wanted, but it's the answer he can give right now, and I decide to accept it. Okay, I say. Okay. You're not going anywhere. I can live with that for now. He exhales, and I realize he'd been holding his breath too. Come on, I say, grabbing the takeout bags. The food's getting cold, and the baby's been craving pad thai for 3 days. The baby or you? Is there a difference at this point? He laughs, and the sound fills my small apartment, and for just a moment, everything feels almost normal. 22 weeks. 24. 26. My body changes in ways I never expected. My stomach rounds, my hips widen, and I catch Sebastian looking at me sometimes with an expression I can't name, hungry and soft and something else entirely. You're staring, I say one afternoon, catching him in the act. Sorry. He doesn't look away. You look. What? Beautiful. The word comes out rough, almost reluctant. You look beautiful, Leo. My face flushes. I'm the size of a small planet. You're growing our son inside your body. That's not being the size of a planet. That's being miraculous. I don't know what to say to that, so I don't say anything. He steps closer, his hand hovering near my stomach like he's afraid to touch without permission. Can I? He asks. I nod, not trusting my voice. His palm presses against the curve of my belly, warm and gentle, and for a moment, neither of us breathes. Then, oh my God. His eyes go wide. Did he just? He kicked. I'm laughing now, tears pricking at the corners of my eyes. He kicked. He's never done that before. Sebastian's hand stays pressed against my stomach, his expression odd, almost reverent. Hey in there, he murmurs. It's your dad. Sorry, it took me so long to figure out how to say that. Something cracks open in my chest, something I've been trying very hard to keep closed. Sebastian, don't. His eyes meet mine, and there's something raw in them, something desperate. Don't tell me this doesn't mean anything. Don't push me away. Not right now. Not when he just kicked for the first time, and I felt it, and his voice breaks. I love you. I love you, and I'm terrified, and I don't know what I'm doing, but I love you. I should say something. I should tell him I love him too, or push him away, or do something other than stand here frozen with his hand on my belly and his confession echoing in my ears. But all I can do is look at him, this man who's been my rival and my tormentor and the father of my child, and realize that somewhere along the way, I stopped wanting to push him away. I'm scared too, I'll whisper. That's not a I love you too. It's the best I can do right now. He nods slowly, his hand still warm on my stomach. Okay, I'll take it. 28 weeks. 30 weeks. The water leak happens on a Tuesday. The pipes in my building burst, Sebastian says, standing in my doorway with a duffel bag and a look that's trying very hard to be casual. They said it'll be at least a week before I can go back. I raise an eyebrow. And you thought my couch was your best option? None of my other friends live this close to the office. He's already stepping inside, already making himself at home. Besides, you're 30 weeks pregnant. You shouldn't be alone. I'm not alone. I have Marcus. Marcus is a beta who's never been pregnant and doesn't know the first thing about what you're going through. Sebastian drops his duffel bag in my living room and surveys the space with those sharp gray eyes, cataloging the pregnancy books stacked on my coffee table, the prenatal vitamins next to my keys, the subtle changes that have transformed my apartment into something softer. I'm staying. It's not a question. You're impossible, I mutter, but I don't tell him to leave. The first few days are awkward. We tiptoe around each other, careful not to touch, careful not to acknowledge the elephant in the room, the fact that we're living together, even temporarily, and neither of us knows what that means. But then he starts cooking dinner, and I start making him coffee in the morning, and somewhere along the way, the awkwardness fades into something almost comfortable. Your apartment is tiny, he says on night 3, sprawled on my couch with his feet hanging over the armrest. My apartment is perfectly adequate. Your bedroom is basically a closet. It's called efficiency. It's called a shoebox. I throw a pillow at him. He catches it and grins, and I hate how much I love that grin. 32 weeks. The nightmare. I wake up gasping, drenched in sweat, the remnants of the dream clinging to my skin like cobwebs. In the dream, I was alone. Sebastian had left, the baby was gone, and I was standing in an empty apartment with nothing but silence and the echo of what might have been. Leo? Sebastian's voice comes from the living room, where he's been sleeping on my too small couch. You okay? I don't answer. I can't answer. A moment later, he's in my doorway, silhouetted against the dim light from the window. Leo? Hey? What's wrong? Nothing. My voice cracks. Go back to sleep. Instead of leaving, he crosses the room and sits on the edge of my bed. The mattress dips under his weight, and I feel the warmth of him through the sheets. You're shaking, he says, his hand finding mine in the darkness. Was it a nightmare? I nod, not trusting my voice. Do you want to talk about it? No. Okay. He doesn't let go of my hand. Okay. Do you want me to stay? Yes, I want to stay. Yes, please stay. Don't ever leave. I'm so scared of doing this alone. But what comes out is, I don't know. He's quiet for a long moment. Then he kicks off his shoes and slides into bed beside me, careful to keep his distance, careful not to crowd me. I'm not going to try anything, he says. You shouldn't be alone right now. I should tell him to go back to the couch. I should maintain the careful boundaries I've built between us, the walls that protect my heart from wanting too much. Instead, I turn toward him and bury my face in his chest. His arms come around me immediately, warm and solid and safe. "I've got you," he murmurs into my hair. "I've got you, Leo. You're not alone." I cry then, quietly, messily, all the fear and exhaustion and overwhelming love I've been holding inside finally spilling over. He holds me through all of it, his hand rubbing slow circles on my back, his scent wrapping around me like a blanket. When the tears finally stop, I'm exhausted and wrung out and more vulnerable than I've ever been. "I love you," I whisper into his chest. "I love you, and I hate that I love you, and I'm so scared." His arms tighten around me. I know. Me too. It's not supposed to be like this. It's supposed to be easier. Nothing about us has ever been easy, Leo. Why would this be any different? I laugh despite myself, a watery, broken sound. "You're such an asshole." "Yeah," he agrees. "But I'm your asshole." I fall asleep in his arms, and for the first time in months, I don't dream at all. 34 weeks. The fight. It starts small, a disagreement about baby names that escalates into something much bigger. "I can't believe you vetoed James," Sebastian says, his voice rising. "It's a classic name. It's strong. It's boring," I snap. "Every alpha in the world is named James. I want something with personality. You want to name our son Casper. Like the ghost. Casper is a perfectly good name. It's a cartoon character. I like that movie as a kid. You're impossible. You're impossible." We're yelling now, standing on opposite sides of my tiny living room like we're preparing for battle. The baby is kicking, probably protesting all the noise, and I'm so frustrated I could scream. "Why do you have to fight me on everything?" I demand. "Why do you have to make everything so difficult?" "Because you make everything difficult. You've made everything difficult since the day we met. Maybe I wouldn't have to make things difficult if you just..." He cuts himself off, jaw clenching. "If I just what?" "Nothing. No, say it. If I just what?" His gray eyes flash. "If you just let me in. If you'd stop pushing me away every time I get too close. If you'd stop acting like you're the only one who's scared." The words hit me like a slap. "I'm not. You are." He's not yelling anymore, but somehow that's worse. His voice is quiet, controlled, and there's something broken underneath it. "You've been pushing me away since the beginning, Leo. And I get it. I understand why. But I'm standing here in your apartment, sleeping on your couch, bringing you breakfast every morning, and you still act like I'm going to disappear at any moment. Because you might." The words tear out of me before I can stop them, and the room goes very still. "Because you might," I repeat, quieter now. "You said yourself you don't know what we are. You said you're still figuring it out. And I'm 34 weeks pregnant with your son, and I love you, and I have no idea if you're going to be here tomorrow or if this is all just obligation, guilt, alpha instincts." Sebastian's face goes pale. "You think this is obligation?" His voice is barely a whisper. "You think I'm here because I feel guilty? Aren't you?" "No." He crosses the room in 3 quick strides and cups my face in his hands, forcing me to meet his eyes. "No, Leo. I'm here because I love you. I'm here because I can't imagine being anywhere else. I'm here because every morning I wake up on your terrible couch, and the first thing I think is how grateful I am that I get to see you. Then why won't you tell me what we are?" He goes still. "Why won't you say it?" I press, my voice cracking. "Why won't you just claim me? Bond with me. Make this real." His hands drop from my face, and he steps back like I've burned him. "Because I'm scared." "Of what?" "Of becoming my father." His voice is raw, stripped of all his usual confidence, of waking up in 10 years and realizing I trapped you into something you didn't want. Of you looking at me the way my mother looks at my father, with resentment, with regret, with love that turned into something ugly. I stare at him. "Every alpha in my family has ruined their omega," he continues, and there's so much pain in his voice that it breaks my heart. "My grandfather. My father. They claimed they're omegas, and then spent the rest of their lives making each other miserable. And I swore I would never do that. I swore I would never trap someone into loving me. You're not your father, Sebastian. I don't know that. You're not. I take his hand, press it against my belly where our son is kicking. You're staying. You're trying. You're here. That's not what your father would do. That's not what your grandfather would do. That's you. That's who you are. His eyes glisten, and I realize he's crying. I love you, I say, and this time it's not a whisper. It's a declaration. I love you, and I'm scared too, and I don't know what the future holds. But I know I want you in it. I want you in our son's life. I want you in my bed and in my kitchen and in every part of my life that matters. Leo. So stop being scared and kiss me already. He kisses me. It's not like the first time, desperate and angry and out of control. It's slow and tender and full of everything we've been too afraid to say. His hands thread through my hair, his mouth moves against mine, and I feel something click into place between us. Something permanent. I love you, he murmurs against my lips. I love you so much it terrifies me. Good, I whisper back. Terrified suits you. 36 weeks. The claiming. It happens naturally, the way these things are supposed to. One moment we're tangled together in my bed, and the next, his mouth is on my neck, his teeth grazing the spot where his mark will go. Is this okay? He asks, and his voice is rough with want and restraint. Yes. I tilt my head back, baring my throat to him. Yes, Sebastian. Claim me. He bites down, and the world explodes into color. The bond snaps into place like it's always been there, like we've been circling each other for 3 years just waiting for this moment. I feel him in my chest, in my bones, in every cell of my body. His fear, his love, his hope, all of it pouring into me through the bond. And he feels mine. I love you, we say at the same time, and then we're laughing and crying and holding each other like we're never going to let go. 38 weeks. The labor. The contractions start at 3 a.m., gentle at first, like a fist squeezing and releasing low in my belly. I lie in bed for an hour, timing them on my phone, trying not to wake Sebastian. He wakes up anyway. Leo? His voice is groggy, his hand reaching for me in the darkness. What's wrong? Nothing. Go back to sleep. Don't lie to your bonded alpha. He sits up, suddenly alert. Are you having contractions? It's probably false labor. Probably. Sebastian, how far apart are they? I show him my phone, and his face goes pale. 8 minutes? Leo, that's not false labor. It could be. It's not. He's already out of bed, pulling on clothes, grabbing a hospital bag we packed 3 weeks ago. I watch him move through my apartment. Our apartment now, I suppose, since he never went back to his, and I'm struck by how much has changed in the past few months. Come on, he says, reaching for my hand. Let's go have a baby. The hospital is chaos. Well, the hospital is actually very organized and professional, but my brain is chaos. The contractions are stronger now, closer together, and every time one hits, I forget how to breathe. Breathe with me, Sebastian murmurs, his hand warm on my lower back. In through your nose, out through your mouth. Just like that. I hate you. I gasp between contractions. I know. I hate you so much. I know. You did this to me. I definitely did. He presses a kiss to my sweaty forehead. And I do it again. The hours blur together. Nurses come and go. Dr. Patel checks my progress. And Sebastian stays by my side the whole time, holding my hand, wiping my forehead, telling me I'm strong and brave and beautiful even when I feel like I'm falling apart. I can't do this. I sob at one point when the pain is too much and I'm too tired and everything hurts. Yes, you can. His voice is steady, certain. You're the strongest person I know, Leo. You've been doing this alone for months. You're not alone anymore. I'm right here. The baby is born at 7:23 p.m. after 16 hours of labor. He's perfect. 7 pounds 3 ounces, with a full head of dark hair and lungs that work just fine. Thank you very much. The nurses place him on my chest, and I'm crying, and Sebastian is crying, and our son is wailing like the world has personally offended him. Hi, I whisper to him. Hi, baby. I'm your daddy. Sebastian leans over us both, his hand cradling the back of the baby's head, and I've never seen him look like this, awed and terrified and overflowing with love. He looks like you, Sebastian says. He looks like a potato. A beautiful potato. He's perfect. I agree. 3 weeks later, we're home. The apartment is still tiny, maybe even tinier now that it's filled with baby things. A bassinet in the corner. A changing table that used to be my desk. Bottles drying on the counter, onesies in a laundry. A mobile hanging from the ceiling that Sebastian stayed up until 2 a.m. assembling. Our son, Noah, we decided, finally compromising on a name that wasn't James or Casper, sleeps in his bassinet, his tiny chest rising and falling with each breath. I used to hate how calm you look during meetings, Sebastian murmurs, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on my bare shoulder as we lie tangled together in my bed. The morning sun streams through the curtains, casting everything in golden light. It drove me crazy, he continues, his voice still rough with sleep. You'd sit there with that perfect poker face while everyone else was scrambling, and I wanted to know what it would take to crack that composure. I laughed softly, careful not to wake the baby. Sleep is precious and rare these days, and I've learned not to take it for granted. I was never calm. I was terrified every single day that you'd figure out how much you affected me. The admission feels safe now, here in the aftermath of everything we've been through. Every time you challenged me or pushed back on my ideas, it made me want to prove myself to you even more. We're idiots, he murmurs against my neck, pressing a gentle kiss to the sensitive spot where his mark is healed into pale scar tissue. All that time we spent fighting, when we could have been doing this instead. His hand slides down to rest on my soft belly, still recovering, still changing, still adjusting to the reality of bringing a life into the world. But the way Sebastian touches me makes me feel beautiful anyway. Would we have figured it out without him? I ask, nodding toward our son. The question has been nagging at me since Noah was born, the wondering about alternate timelines and different choices. Or would we have just kept dancing around each other forever? It's a fair question. For 3 years, we circled each other like planets in opposing orbits, too close to ignore, too stubborn to acknowledge what was happening. If I hadn't gotten pregnant, if we hadn't been forced to confront the reality of our connection, would we still be playing our elaborate game of professional rivalry? I like to think we would have, he says, but there's honesty in his voice when he adds, but maybe we needed something bigger than ourselves to force us to stop being scared. He shifts to look at me directly, propping himself up on one elbow, so he can meet my eyes. His gray gaze is serious, intense, in a way that used to make me nervous during presentations, but now makes my heart skip for entirely different reasons. I love you, Leo, he says, and even though he's said it dozens of times over the past few weeks, it still sends a thrill through me. Not because you carried my child. Not because of Alpha Omega biology or pheromones or any of that bullshit. I love you because you challenge me and surprise me and make me want to be better than I am. The words wash over me like warm water, soothing parts of myself I didn't even realize were still tender. For so long, I convinced myself that any attention from alphas was either pity or biological imperative. The idea that someone could love me for who I am, rather than what I am, still feels revolutionary. I love you too, I whisper back, and the words feel like coming home after a long journey. Even when you're being an insufferable alpha who thinks he knows what's best for everyone. He grins at that, the smile I've been falling for without realizing it for 3 years. It's the same smile he used to flash after winning a client or closing a deal, but now it's just for me. Intimate and private, and completely genuine. Our son stirs in his bassinet, making the soft mewling sounds that mean he's about to wake up hungry. He's been on a fairly predictable schedule for the past week, waking every 3 hours like clockwork. It's exhausting, but there's something comforting about the routine, about knowing what he needs and being able to provide it. Your turn, I say automatically. But Sebastian is already getting up, reaching for the robe he keeps draped over my bedroom chair. 3 weeks into parenthood, and we've developed our own rhythm. He handles the middle-of-the-night feedings while I pump. I take the early morning shift while he gets ready for work. Watching him lift Noah into his arms with such gentle confidence makes my heart swell until I think it might burst. He's a natural father in ways I never expected, patient during fussy periods, enthusiastic about diaper changes, completely smitten with every tiny sound our son makes. The transformation from competitive colleague to devoted partner and father has been remarkable to witness. "Good morning, beautiful," he coos to Noah, and our son opens his eyes to stare up at him with that serious baby expression that reminds me so much of how Sebastian looks during important presentations. Ready to start another day of having the best parents in the world? The casual way he includes himself in that statement, like it's the most natural thing in the world, makes me realize how completely our lives have intertwined. Somewhere along the way, we stopped being rivals and became a family instead. The transition happened so gradually that I can't pinpoint exactly when it occurred. Maybe it was the night of the nightmare, when he held me until I stopped shaking. Maybe it was the claiming, when his teeth sank into my throat and the bond snapped into place. Maybe it was watching him hold our son for the first time, tears streaming down his face, murmuring promises I know he'll keep. But lying here in bed, watching him cradle our son, it feels like the most inevitable thing in the world. He settles back into bed with Noah, positioning the baby between us so we can both admire his perfect tiny features. He has Sebastian's dark hair and my stubborn chin, and his eyes are still that indeterminate newborn blue that could go either direction. Marcus swears he can already see personality emerging, determination in the way he latches during feeding, curiosity in how he tracks movement with his eyes. "I have something for you," Sebastian says suddenly, reaching toward his nightstand drawer. "I was going to wait until tonight, make it more romantic, but..." He pulls out a small velvet box, and my breath catches in my throat. "Sebastian," I whisper, my heart starting to race. "Before you panic," he says quickly, "this isn't about doing the right thing, or making an honest omega out of you, or any of that traditional alpha bullshit. This is about the fact that I want to spend the rest of my life waking up next to you, arguing about whose turn it is to change the baby, competing over who can make Noah laugh first." He opens the box to reveal a simple but beautiful ring, not the massive diamond I might have expected from someone with a salary, but something delicate and elegant that's perfectly suited to my taste. "This is about the fact that you're my best friend and my greatest challenge and the love of my life, all rolled into one impossibly stubborn, brilliant, beautiful person." His voice is rough now, thick with emotion, and I want to make it official in every way that matters. I stare at the ring, then at him, then at our son sleeping peacefully between us. 6 months ago, if someone had told me this would be my life, that Sebastian Vance would be proposing marriage while our newborn son naps in our shared bed, I would have laughed in their face. "Yes," I say, the words slipping out before I can overthink them. "Yes, you insufferable alpha. I'll marry you." His grin is radiant as he slips the ring onto my finger. It fits perfectly, which makes me suspect he's been planning this for longer than he's letting on. Noah chooses that moment to let out a tiny yawn, his little fist uncurling as he stretches, and we both laugh at the timing. "I think he approves," Sebastian says, pressing a kiss to my forehead. "He'd better," I reply, holding up my hand to admire the ring. "He's going to be stuck with us for the next 18 years at least." As we lie there in the morning light, me, Sebastian, and the tiny person we created together, I think about all the assumptions I made, all the walls I built, all the ways I tried to protect myself from getting hurt. I thought I was being careful. I thought I was being smart. I thought I could handle everything on my own, that I didn't need anyone, that love was just biology playing tricks on vulnerable omegas. I was wrong about all of it. Love isn't a trap. It's not a biological imperative, or an obligation, or a series of compromises that leave everyone bitter and resentful. Love is Sebastian making me breakfast every morning, even when I'm too grumpy to appreciate it. Love is him holding me through a nightmare and staying even when I try to push him away. Love is watching him become a father and knowing, with absolute certainty, that he's going to be extraordinary at it. Love is terrifying and messy and nothing like I expected. But it's also the best thing that's ever happened to me. You're thinking too loud, Sebastian murmurs, his fingers playing with the ring on my hand. I'm happy, I say because it's true. I'm really genuinely happy. He smiles, that smile that used to make me want to punch him and now makes me want to kiss him. Yeah, he agrees. Me too. Noah makes a soft sound in his sleep, and we both look down at him. This perfect, impossible, life-changing tiny person who brought us together when everything else was trying to tear us apart. Thank you, I whisper to him, even though he can't understand me yet. Thank you for choosing us. Sebastian's hand finds mine, and our fingers intertwine over our son's sleeping form. We're going to be okay, he says. It's not a question. And for the first time in months, I believe it. Then,